Hey everybody, welcome to Tattva Tuesday. This is Lindsay Warwick, the conduit on Spotify and YouTube, continuing with our spiritual interview series, where I bring on guests that talk about their spiritual journey and also their spiritual offerings. This week, super excited to have one of my dear friends and mentors on the podcast, Scott Evans. He is an intuitive facilitator, healer, craniosacral practitioner, naturopath, and also the creator of ConSoultation. So super excited to have you on the podcast this week, Scott. How's it going?
Great to see you. It's great. It's going great.
It is. Yeah, it's so good to see you. Oh man. So stoked because you were supposed to be on the podcast earlier. I don't know.
Right.
I'm not good with dates. Like a couple months ago, but I think you were traveling somewhere.
Yeah, I ended up. I'm sorry to say it was a horrible experience. I had to go to Hawaii.
Sounds terrible.
It was just terrible.
Yeah, well, I'm just glad that you're here now, and I'm sure, who knows what will come out today, but I'm sure it'll all be in alignment and everything is already, orchestrated by the divine. So I guess I met you, I'm horrible with dates and years, but years ago. And you have been such a pivotal part of my spiritual journey. I actually found you through a woman who was doing some channeling work at the time, Nicole.
Okay, yeah.
Yes.
I forgot about that.
Yes, she was doing some channeling work and mentioned your name and told me that I needed to connect with you. And
she was doing channeling work before channeling work was hip.
She was doing channeling work before it was cool. So that's how I found you. And had the great honor to work with you, privately and also attend sweat lodges. So that was a huge part of my spiritual practice when I lived in the Northeast. It's something that I really miss here. I wish it was here in South Carolina in Myrtle Beach. So if anyone's listening and y'all know where there's a sweat lodge nearby, let me know. But yeah, I just have such great reverence to you and great respect for you. And yeah, I'm just glad you're here. So let's tell the people about your spiritual journey. Like, how did you get on the spiritual path?
Well, it's a long story. So I was, like so many of us, right? It's funny because, in the idea for a book I was coming up with, I was going to call the book A Common Life, because for so many of us, these things are so common. We have so many things in common, including not just the fact that we're all connected to the creator and we all come from the same source, but the idea that, that kind of turmoil that happens in our lives, it turns our worlds upside down into the place where we no longer can rely on our own self, our own structure of ideas and beliefs and concepts to move through without being in excruciating pain. Some people come by it physically, but for me, it was a mental, spiritual, emotional pain that had me at first searching for ways to figure out what the hell was going on. And in those ways, I figured that self-help books would be the key to the experience, right? So I remember getting The Road Less Traveled and reading the first sentence of Life is Difficult. I'm like, oh yeah, well, they got me. They got me on that one. But I got to the point where I just didn't want to wake up anymore. I didn't want to be around. I was just so devastated emotionally and spiritually. I was bankrupt. And I remember I was living in a friend's attic. Basically had, not much, 2 pennies to rub together. I was deeply in debt and kind of struggling and suffering, and realized that I had everything that I ever wanted, which is pretty amusing because, the things that I wanted were, like money, enough money, and I had access to those things and people in my life And I was playing music, and I, was on stage and jumping around like an idiot and getting attention. And that's really what I wanted. And, through a lot of pain. And thinking like I had these things that I wanted, but yet I wasn't happy, like something's wrong. And I didn't know at the time it was an inside job. I didn't understand that was happening. So I don't know why, but I do believe that deep down within each and every one of us is this idea that there is some kind of a power, something that creates us, that we're connected to. And I went into this other side of this attic, and I got down on my knees and I threw my hands up in the air, and I just basically said, I can't do this anymore. Help me. If you're out there, help me. And something really strange happened. I had this really bizarre feeling. And I'd love to tell you everything was, bright and rosy and cheery after that. And the heavens opened and God came down and said, here you go. You're healed. You're cured. This is great. Spread the word. But it didn't work out that way. But because of that, being in that place of surrender, people started coming into my life that would guide me into places that I needed to be. And a lot of those things were one of the first things that I needed to do was to stop drinking. And that was challenging because it was my whole world. And it's really what I did, what I knew. And sooner or later, people started coming into my life that would direct me to a path of trying to figure out how to become more whole. But looking really, it was, like I said, it was an inside job. And I remember after things started to clear up and the fog started to lift a little bit, and started to figure out that the prayer life was a way that worked, even though I didn't understand it. I remember going into I was going to go back to school, like so many of us want to do. And I went to the local community college, to the registrar's office, to figure out how to do that. And saw this, distracting shiny object, right? It was a poster about a yoga class.
Oh.
And I realized there's something in yoga. I remember something about meditation in yoga. And I got to tell you that, this is only one of the many experiences that I had. I kind of abandoned the school idea at that point and went to this yoga class that was happening, 5 minutes after I saw that poster on the campus. And I went to the yoga class, and the yoga was fine. It was neutral. It was okay. But we did this meditation at the end of the class, and I had an out-of-body experience that I can just tell you that I literally was flying around, seeing all these things in the campus, and all these messages and information started coming to me. And I started to remember some of the things that happened when I was a child, some of the things of seeing people talking and hearing people talking and not knowing what that was. And I had this incredible feeling of joy, the spontaneous, at that point, it wasn't a Kundalini experience, a Kundalini awakening, which happened later on down my path, but it was the beginning of that. And I remember thinking, after I really started applying meditation and prayer into my life, and started having these vital spiritual experiences. And I realized that I couldn't hold on to this myself, that I had to somehow help others on this path. And as it turned out, as the Creator would see fit, as God would see fit, whatever you choose to call that source of strength for you, it brought me into a job working in the YWCA, and I eventually became a director of health promotions for that organization. And they had a crisis center there, and one of the people there had known about my experience, my transformational experiences, and said, here's a card of somebody that can help you, that you might be interested in taking their courses and classes. And I'm like, it sounds good. And I looked at their brochure and I was like, this is okay. It was massage and shiatsu and reflexology, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, that's okay. But there was energy-based healing methodologies. and laying on of hands and cross-cultural healing techniques. And I was like, that I really aligned with. It was, and you know what it's like when you get that, it's not just a gut check, but a spirit check, a soul check. It's just like, it rings true for you and aligns with your spirit and the thing. And I was off to the races. I mean, I just really, I grasped onto that as hard as I could to keep going, to keep this information coming. And more was revealed over time, and through working with people about how this intuition had always been part of my experience, how this energy work has always been a part of my experience, that I believe in my experiences that we all have access to those abilities and those talents, if you want to call them that. Sometimes they don't feel like such a talent. Sometimes it almost feels like a burden. But anyway, which I'm sure that you understand.
I do.
But honing those ideas and concepts, and throughout the years, like I said, coming into contact with people that would guide me on the path about how to be in service to others. And through those techniques, I was able to do that. And through being in service to others, there was more information that would come. And then there's more techniques and more abilities, more classes, more learnings, more teachings, and different elders, different places, different ceremonies, things came up that just led me to where I am today. And it's an eclectic mix of amazing, miraculous experiences, which again, are common to all of us. I just don't think that we realize it most of the time.
Yeah.
So that's my story.
I love it. I'm glad that you were able to share that with us. It's so interesting how, like, you said a couple things that like just kind of aligned with my day today. Like you said, the road less traveled. And I record another podcast on a weekly basis. We're going through Journey to the Heart, and the reading was Go Along for the Ride. And I talked about how I never take the safe road. I'm always on the road less traveled, and it's hard sometimes. Right. So that was funny that you said that. And then you were also talking about, enrolling in school, and, you saw the yoga, and like, you just kind of went to the class. I have a similar experience. I was getting my master's in social work, and I had a Reiki session done, and that was I just deferred school and went and pursued the yoga certifications. But I had some out of body experiences, and yoga is kind of like the gateway, I guess, that got me into this spiritual path. So I thought that was really cool that we have those similarities. And also right now I'm looking into enrolling in massage school, which is funny because I did all the energy work stuff, and now I'm gonna enroll in massage therapy to put it all together. I think, I don't know, we'll see. But you said we'll
see where it takes you.
Yeah.
We'll see where it takes you, right?
Yeah. I mean, the governor here is offering free tuition. So how can I even say no to that?
Right.
So that's kind of what I was doing today, was my FAFSA and getting it all together. But you said that you've had all these amazing experiences. Are there any of those? Are there any that kind of stand out that you feel comfortable sharing? And this doesn't have to be a client experience. It can be your experience.
I'll tell you, I don't know why this came up, so I'll just
just let it.
As we work, just let it happen. I was in massage school training. I do craniosacral work, and one of the classes was a weekend class on craniosacral work, and I was like, that's kind of cool. I'm kind of digging that. It was kind of cool, but I didn't understand the whole intuitive piece to it, and the feeling of the energies, and the more subtle aspects of it. I got the flow and the expansion and contraction of the energy systems and how that feels and where to go in the body to check it. I got all that stuff, but I didn't get into I didn't truly understand it. It didn't click. And I went out west And this is just one of many experiences of, as you know, people show up, and things show up.
Yeah.
I went out west to help somebody do some work on doing a vision quest. And it just so happens there was a medical doctor there who was also a chiropractic doctor, but I didn't know. And all she did was craniosacral therapy.
Oh, wow.
She really just was focused on, because it was such a powerful technique for her. And it just so happens in the middle of this experience, as we were camping, one of the elders of the tribe, he had a tree fall on him. And she sent a runner, came over to me and said, she's calling for you. She wants you to help her with this guy. So I went to help her with this guy. And I got to tell you, it was an amazing experience. But I was working with this man, and one of the things that was so beautiful was I asked him, and I'll leave his name out of it, but I asked him at one point, we started working on him, and I didn't know what she was doing, but it was almost as if we were in tandem. Like she would move at the exact same moment and I would move, and we were feeling the same things at the same time. And I remember saying to him, pray, we need you to pray. And, you know, people pray, and sometimes they pray for the things that they need. And that's really what I was asking. I was asking him to pray for help and for healing and for the pain to go away. And he prayed for every single person that he knew. And he prayed for the plants, the trees, the flowers, the bees. I mean, every person, every place. Not one time did he say a prayer for himself. And all I could do was cry hysterically. And after this whole session happened, he felt 1,000% better. But the point was, the woman, Dr. Nancy Sullivan, she said to me, listen, you have to learn how to do this work. You know, and she took me under her wing. And next thing I know, I'm flying out to Seattle and doing trainings with her and working out of her offices and working with clients together and patients together. But it just shows you how, you mentioned this earlier on, about sometimes all we need to do is show up. You know, had I not done that, taken that action to help other people to pray in the way that they're comfortable with and support them through that, I would never have run into this woman. Mm-hmm. And I would never have learned the techniques in a way that align with who I am as a human being, as a spiritual person. So that's kind of, it's, you know, you can't buy, I used to, you know, I've done a lot of stuff with audio engineering and sound, and you can teach on a professional level, and you can teach people how to turn knobs and tweak things and make and move things so that they will affect what you want them to affect. But there's something that happens to certain individuals and certain people where it just aligns with them, and intuitively and instinctively they get it and can make it work and make it work really well. But it's a lot of times based on so much experience, and that's kind of what happened by just showing up, is getting these experiences. That's just one of those things.
I love that. And before you said, it's like, it's more than a gut feeling. It's like a soul knowing. And that's like when you saw the sign for the yoga class, your soul was like, go to that. I had an experience. I've been spending a lot of time alone on it, to be honest. If I'm not teaching or working with clients, like I'm alone and I like it. But this Taurus, new moon, solar eclipse energy, I went to the beach by myself, meditated, and I, got a ping to like go walk on the pier. And I did. I walked on the pier and nothing out of the ordinary happened. I'm like, I guess spirit just wants to see if I'm actually going to listen to them now, because I used to get very clear messages and I would say, oh, well, I got this. And then it ends up insane. But now I'm like, oh, okay, I'll go and do that. You know what I mean? So it's interesting, but it's like a soul knowing to listen into that. And then you can kind of, after a long time, you get to this place of discernment of that is a good, that's good guidance coming in versus, oh, that's just my fear or my, you know what I mean? Like deciphering between fear and intuition has had been such a hard thing for me for so long. And now I feel like I'm getting more comfortable with the discernment aspect of that. But it's such a beautiful story, amazing story.
You talked about that intuition.
Yeah.
And when I teach the cultivating intuition classes that I've taught, I mean, that's one of the things that I want to help invoke with people is to get this sense, the idea that this is how it feels. This is what it feels like, not just physically, tactilely, or just, but spiritually, soulfully, about when you get intuitive information and how strong and powerful that is, and just to discern between our own thoughts and what that intuition actually is. And that's challenging. I think it was Deepak Chopra that said, that our gut feeling is much more accurate because it doesn't have to run it through our mind first to approve whether it's okay or not okay. That this is, it takes some working with that and some experience to get that ability to discern.
Yeah. I mean, I'm like, I was expecting some big event to happen on the pier. They're like, go to the pier. And I walked the pier and nothing happened. But I was like, oh, I feel good. I don't know. I just walk the pier, walk back. So maybe that's
and who's to say that because you went there, something didn't happen, something else didn't happen.
Yeah.
Who's to say? I don't know.
Yeah.
But I've had these experiences too. It's like I'll go over here and it's like, oh, there's nothing here. Why am I here?
Yeah. It's just, I guess it's a trust exercises with yourself and with your spirit guides,
Yeah.
But I know, so you started talking about craniosacral therapy, and just for listeners that may not know what that is, can you kind of just tell us what it is?
Well, it was derived from osteopathic medicine. It's a technique with which there's 3 membranes that surround the spinal cord and the brain, and in between these membranes is a fluid, and there's a rhythm or a pattern that's intrinsic, specific to this fluid that exists anywhere, any part of the body, a certain pattern of expansion and contraction. It's a very subtle rhythm. It's separate from the heart rate. It's separate from the respiratory rate. But when there's what we call a restriction in the body, something that's not allowing the body to move freely, that rhythm will be affected, and you can feel that pattern being disrupted. The idea of the cranial work is to get, for me, this is my experience, because I throw so many other things into the mix here.
Yeah.
Is to get the conscious mind in touch with the unconscious, because the principle being, I think in any healing modality, it's like given the correct resources, or the right resources, the body will balance itself. So the idea being that get the conscious mind in touch with the unconscious restrictions so that the body has the ability to say, wait a minute, this pattern is not in balance. Let's bring this back into balance. And sometimes for me, it requires maybe a gentle manipulation of the body, or maybe it's an emotional content of some kind of trauma that might be kind of stuck in that area of the body, or it really depends on the individual, but it addresses one of the beautiful aspects of the work is that there isn't really many contraindications, so that this isn't available to most people. It works. Each person presents a different feeling and sensation, a different path. I always call it a path to wholeness, and I say that there's as many paths to wholeness as there are people on this planet. So I think that's why the work is so successful, is that it touches with the person where they are to get to what they need to get through. And Cranio is just one of the many things that can be used to help access that healing within each person. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's amazing. And I love how you're like, there's so much more that happens in your sessions than just Cranio, because I categorize my sessions as Reiki, but it's like a full reading. It's like a reading, a balancing, energy work, clearing, work with the guides. It's like a whole thing. It's not
Right.
just Reiki. So I love that you said that there's so much more than just the cranio sacral aspect of your healings. And I have experienced your healings, and they've been, profound. And I remember I was just opening up to the Archangel Michael energy when I met you, and I was like, what's happening? I'm freaked out. And like, you just help guide me, and it was less scary, but everything was just like, wow, like everything was just aligning and making sense. And you were just a good mentor to have, a good person to have for help, so I'm grateful to you.
Thank you. I'm
And I'm
grateful that
sure a
you're.
lot of people are.
It's interesting what happens within the work. One of the things that I do is the consultation,
Yes.
and it was a byproduct of the pandemic, of not always, especially early on in the pandemic in 2020, we were not allowed to practice
Right.
hands-on work. So the idea being that since everything is energy and everything can be monitored and felt from any distance at all, it's just the intention that is set that makes the difference. The work that I do in person, one-on-one, can be done remotely, and that's really what a consultation is.
And it's console, like
right.
SOUL.
OUL.
I just wanted the listeners to know that. I love that.
Yeah, there's information about it on the website, but it involves intuitive work. It's interesting that I think almost to a person, most people don't understand how much the intuition plays into the techniques that I utilize, into the work that I do. So the intuition part is so important, because your body will tell us certain things, correct? Right? It will say, maybe I always say, don't overlook the obvious. If somebody's hips are out of alignment, their hips are out of alignment. But there are some other more subtle energies that are affecting the whole being. And some of those things are from maybe some more early traumas. Some of those things are maybe some accidents that people haven't emotionally recovered from, not just physical components, but when those things are brought to light. And I think it's also important to mention that the way things are reframed to people is really important. The way what words are used to give the experience to that person about what they may have been going through, that you have information from them because they're allowing you to be in that space with them. So it is a sacred contract. It is very sacred, and it's an honor to be taking part in that communication.
Yeah.
But when people when you talk to someone, you tell them about things that they would never have revealed to you otherwise.
I know, that happens to me, and it's like
a lot of people, it can scare or kind of freak people out, but it helps with the communication, and to help with this bond between client and practitioner, so that they feel in a more safe atmosphere to do the work, and they're more comfortable with being able to move through whatever restrictions they're experiencing. And consultation is simply a remote way of doing that. If everything is energy, which I don't see how we can deny that that's the case. If everything is energy, then
our bodies die.
Right.
This stops working, but our souls don't die.
Right. There is something to the energy of what we're experiencing. Rupert Sheldrake talks about that intensely in a lot of his work about morphic resonance, he calls it. And he talks about the idea that there must be some source that we tap into that dictates how our cells divide and reproduce and become what they are. I think his explanation is, why doesn't, an oak tree always become an oak tree and not some other kind of tree? Well, there must be something intrinsic in that energy transference that informs that pod, that seed, to grow in the way that it needs to grow to be what it is. And that energy, if it's universal, that can be tapped into. And that's the information that's available to all of us. It's not just because some people are special. It's not that at all. It's just that some people, it happens to more frequently, and in some people's situations, they've had to become intuitive in order to defend themselves and survive. And that's why some of this, it's easier for some than others to access that ability, but it's for all of us. The consultation is just simply a remote work. So I do a session where I'll talk with people for I don't know how long it will be. Maybe it's a half an hour, maybe it's 40 minutes, and talk to them about experiences and help them to move through some experiences. And then maybe get into some energy work, some remote energy work, which I've done the whole Reiki programs, and it can seem like, remote Reiki work, but or remote energy work. But it's something that, as you said, people can have a profound experience and that's consultation.
I want to do that with you.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be great. I definitely.
Well, you're like an open book, though. So.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
But it's always good, I'm always doing something. I'm always doing the work or taking care of my spiritual wellness. That's part of my authentic code. So it's part of what makes me happy, what makes me tick is like spiritual growth. That's like number one, spiritual growth, spiritual conversations. That's why I'm doing this podcast. I don't even know why I'm doing the podcast. I just got the message through the podcast. I got the name for the podcast. I got the name to call myself for the podcast. And I was like, all right, I'll do it. I don't know for what, but well, it makes me happy to have these spiritual conversations.
And I think that you said, you don't know what.
No, I don't.
You don't, but you do know that it will show up, by
it will show up if I
doing
show
the
up.
Work, right. If you show up by doing the work and half of the job is showing up, right?
Yeah.
And you don't know where it's going to lead you. And I always say, it's probably a great thing if I don't know where it's going to take me, because if I think that I know where it's going to take me, I might not like it. I might not want it. And I'm going to try to manipulate it and change it into what I want it to be. And that most likely is not going to be in my highest good. And if it's not in my highest good, it's not going to be in your highest good.
Yeah. Like this is something that I don't make money on. I actually I pay to do this.
Right.
But as soon as I had the idea, I filled out my calendar. My calendar is booked with interviews until the end of June. So, and then I just, for some reason, didn't feel inclined to continue with booking. So I don't know why. I mean, I'm sure I can. I just haven't reached out to people, but I knew all these people that have helped me so much on my path, and that I can see, I think that's part of my dharma. And maybe you and I talked about this. I think Nicole and I talked about this back in the day. Like I can see people, like I really can see them. And I don't know, I can just see how much that they have to offer. And so it was just easy to kind of fill the interview spots.
Right. I was shocked when you were like, let's do this interview. I'm like, okay. And I said, oh, wait, I can't. I'm going to Hawaii. And you're like, okay, I have like 3 months later. I'm like, what?
I know. I was like, all right. So we're going to have to wait until like May. Yeah. It's been interesting, but very, very excited. And it's sort of my big thank you to Spirit. And when I'm talking to you, I keep hearing the Native American, they're in my name and in my head. Their names in my head.
Okay.
Yeah, like, yeah, I'm hearing the, I don't know, the Great Spirit in my head as
Wow.
I'm talking to you. And I just want to say like, aho to you. Like, I don't know, I just get into that energy, but it's my thank you to God, Goddess, Spirit. Like,
Right.
thank you for this. And so now I'm giving people the opportunity to share about their experiences with God and Spirit and who we really are on the inside.
We have all these concepts and beliefs, and that's one of the things we get into with consultation is we have all these concepts and constructs and beliefs about who we are. And it just, that's based on erroneous thoughts of like beliefs that are probably not even ours, that we just took on from maybe our guardians or people that maybe hurt us, or these beliefs, or, and even to the other side of that is, the shadow stuff of like, well, I'm going to show that person, I'm going to become this, just as not living your life for you and the path that you've chosen. You're living your life to try not to be something. And anytime we're trying not to be something, we're wildly out of control. We need to focus on things that help us move through, beyond, get the information, the wisdom to keep moving forward, to keep doing the work, just keep showing up. And it's a journey. And I'm like most people, I get caught up in the journey of life, like, oh, what do I have to do right now? Or I've got to get all these things in together, and I have this anxiety, or maybe this is some depression, or maybe it's chemical, maybe it's stuff, it's life.
Like, we're spiritual beings having human experiences, and it's like we come into this body and it's like we have a deep forgetting, and then as you're on the spiritual path, you start peeling away the layers and you start remembering. And that's why, like, I also like picked up on when you said, oh, I went through the Reiki programs and it's kind of like Reiki. Well, to me, the more I'm on this path, the more everything is just oneness. Don't mind me, I'm holding onto my aura quartz. I feel like everything is just oneness. And I used to say, oh, I can't do that Reiki session if I don't have my quartz with me. But the more I'm on the path, the more I've learned it's intention, it's prayer, it's intention, it's your relationship with spirit. It's okay if you don't have the quartz, like, you know what I mean? And that all those, it's like rules have sort of fallen away, but the more the rules fall away and the more that I know, the less that I know too. So it's like this simplification, but I'm still like, I don't know anything.
Right. We think that sometimes we have to be taking certain actions, and maybe in our prayer life or even our work life, it's spiritual work or energy work. We have to have our accoutrements with us, whether they be feathers or drums or crystals or, whatever tools you're used to utilizing. But they're tools. We have access to that information just by our intention and our thought. We do have that ability. We're all connected. And I don't know one native tribal community that doesn't understand the concept of all my relations, right? We are related to everything, and everything is related to us. And if we are, I'll quote Rupert Sheldrake again, he believes that our ancestors vibrated at a certain frequency. These are our relations. We can tap into that frequency and get the information that our ancestors have learned. And in his research, he's shown that is actually factual, that one generation that have gone through certain learning experiences, the next generation will already know how to do those and how to understand those experiences.
Who is this Rupert gentleman?
Rupert Sheldrake.
Yeah.
I believe he's an ethnobiologist, I believe, from Cambridge University.
Wow.
He's got a few books out. He's a fascinating guy. I'm not sure if he's still with us in this world or not. He may have crossed over, but I'm not really sure. But he has a book called morphic resonance, the
Wow,
presence of
cool.
the presence of the past. I think it's what one of his
Oh,
books is
whoa.
called. It's he also has a book that's written about mostly about how dogs know that their owners are coming home.
My dog is literally laying. I don't know if you saw him creep around
No,
before. He's right.
no, I can't.
He's
No,
chilling. You can't see him. He's just
no.
laying down right here, but he's an angel, my dog. Yeah, but that sounds cool. Those definitely sound like books that I would be interested in reading. Are you still offering lodges up there?
We put together a lodge, you know. I don't like to talk much about it, but you know, we do, because it's such a sacred ceremony that
It
I
is so
honor.
beautiful.
And so yeah, I still am involved in that ceremony and doing lodges and all over the place. So I just it's a way that, like I talked about that yoga class, that I connected, and that was a path that followed with me for a long time, you know, that I never let go of those experiences. But when I came across some people that prayed in a traditional Native American path, I was, you know, the world opened up to me. I became at one point that one with all things. And it actually had me have an experience where I literally got to that place of nothingness. There was no want, there was no desire, there's no thought, it was just the unity of all things. And in that, there was nothingness that contained everything.
Was that on a vision quest?
We'll call it a vision quest.
Okay.
It was another powerful ceremony, but you know, and the vision quests have been very you know, one of my old teachers would say, expect nothing but be ready for anything. And you just don't know what's going to show up.
Do you decide as the person, like, I want to go on a vision quest, or does it just, because
That's so
I'm
funny.
like, I'm like, how does that happen for a person?
Well, I think for a person, and this is just my experience, I think that people have decided that they think that that's what they want to do. I mean, some people say, wait a minute, you can go off and go onto a mountaintop by yourself for 4 days and 4 nights. Like, that sounds great. Sign me up. Let me just go ahead and do that. But it's not just about being by yourself. You know, there's so much more to it. And my experience has been, I think it's like you had mentioned about maybe something that calls your attention, that resonates with your soul, and you're like, yeah, I have to do that. It's something that resonates with your soul, and people like you, and perhaps people like me, we may get affirmations of, you know, you talked about clairaudience before we went on this recording. Maybe it's something that's said to you. Maybe it's something in a vision that you see, that's like, you know, you have to do this. My experience, my intention has always been, oh hell no, I'm not doing any of that.
Yeah, me too.
Until it gets to the point where, you know, I say in lodges a lot, if spirit wants your attention, they will get your attention. And if they're calling to you, they will call to you. But some people have made up their minds to do it, and that's what they want to do. They just decide that, and you know, my hat's off to them. You know, some people have had incredible experiences doing that.
And I won't share about the ceremony itself, but I will share that my experience with lodge, I was very afraid to participate. I don't know if you remember this. I was very afraid to get in there. And I was the last one in there. I was like, oh my God, I was crying, and I felt like I was home. And yeah, so it was definitely something, one of those things that felt very familiar. And it was also one of those things I was so afraid to do. But then when I leaned into the fear,
Right.
It was like this amazing, like, spiritual experience. And it's been a huge component of my of my path. Like you've been a
Yeah.
huge part of my path, and it's just funny how that works. Like you were
Yeah.
saying, oh, I was like, hell no to that. That's like, I didn't want to be a yoga teacher. People are like, oh, how'd you get into Reiki? I'm like, I did not want to do this. This is not
Right.
what I thought I would be doing, is like helping others and, clearing blockages and all the things that I do. It wasn't one day I was like, I think I'll take a Reiki class and become a Reiki master. That's not,
No.
there was a lot of suffering for me. There's been a lot of suffering on this path.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's required, but
No, I mean, I guess it does seem that it's not the easiest. And maybe it's our own making. Like you
maybe.
said about the fear of the resistance to, to doing these things, our own fears that get in the way, that was what creates this suffering for us. And I'm not immune to that. So but again, intuitively, it's like, how do you tell you're being asked to do? I really do also believe that it's more challenging for us to get our information for our own selves, because like I talked about Deepak Chopra saying, we run it through the mind about, good or bad, right or wrong, likes, dislikes, should I, shouldn't I, what'll happen if, what have happened if I do, what happens if I don't, just, is it true, is it not true? We kind of juggle all these thoughts and concepts. But when we work with other people, it's a little more clear because we don't have that self-centered mind chatter.
Right. I actually had somebody ask me the other day, you're so great at what you do. Like, why would you ask anyone else for their advice? And it's like, just because of what you just said. It's like, everything goes through my filters, and it's like I have these I have attachments to these things that I'm trying to decipher for myself. So someone who doesn't have the emotional attachment can look at it objectively and use their intuition as well to assist with whatever, you know what I mean?
Right.
And that's exactly what you just said, pretty much.
And I don't tell, like probably you, I don't tell people what they should do or have to do.
Never.
But just present people with the information, and it's almost like the cranial work, where you just allow the conscious mind to hear what's being said, to understand what's being said by the unconscious, so that they can make that decision and make those choices in their own best interest.
Absolutely.
And maybe get out of their own way.
Yeah, because spirit taught me a lot about integrity and humility and free will and asking permission, and just, I live in very strong integrity. And so I don't tell people what to do, but I'll tell them the messages, and I'll tell them what I see and what I feel. And then if there are like little things that they can do to work on themselves, if they choose to, that's kind of, I assist in that if they ask, but I'm not like, you should do this and you should do that and blah, blah, blah. Like, no way. We're sovereign beings.
And who really knows what somebody else's path truly is?
I know. I'm not God.
No, I've been able to help a lot of people in this journey of life, and get some information that's been really, truly a blessing for some people, and have shifted lives in really positive ways. And I'm sure that you have as well. And I don't know what continues to drive me to continue to give it away, but to do what I do. But something is in that. And I believe that there's a reciprocal communication here. It's not just that I'm going to be constantly being of service and I'm doing and doing and doing, but there's what I get back from feedback, not just positive reinforcement from working with clients, but the feedback that I get, the insight, the wisdom, the understandings, the commonality of the common human experience of like, we are in this together.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're not alone anymore.
Yeah.
It's so rewarding to continue to feel that,
Mm-hmm.
and to understand that. And
It really
I don't know how else I would get to those experiences other than doing the work that I do.
It's true. It's like, well, you're following your dharma.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I hear that. I hear that 100%, that, yeah, because, and you said it before, like, these are gifts, but they, you know, for me, it used to feel like such a burden and so much struggle. And now I'm just owning it, and I'm like I'm accepting it more and more and more, and just embodying that that's who I am, and this is my dharma. And yeah, but your sigh. Yeah.
My dharma. It's a fascinating journey, this thing called life.
It really is. The work, it's like, it's so beautiful too, because I don't know if this is true for you, but for me, it's like I see aspects of myself in all my clients.
You do, and
we're
you
all
will.
one.
We are all one. It's also interesting how certain clients will show up with the same concerns, and they don't know each other. They're from different walks of life, different backgrounds, different histories, and it's just how it's like, wow, this is interesting.
It'll
and
be like the same energetic patterns.
Yeah, and the jury's still out for me about why that happens, but it's brilliant, and it's very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, maybe it's something for me to learn as well as the person I'm working with.
Absolutely. I mean, that's how I feel about it. I'm always so humbled, and I love that you said it's like a reciprocal communication, because their spirit is open to you. And so I always like thank their spirit for being so open and vulnerable and sharing and being in the sacred space of trust and healing. And it takes a lot to like be open and vulnerable.
It does. And it's one of the things I'm so thankful for, of the people that I work with, how comfortable they feel working with me.
I know, isn't it nice?
You know, it really is. It's an honor.
It's such an honor.
Privilege.
It is really a privilege. It is an honor and a privilege. And I actually wanted to share this. I'm wearing this necklace right now. It's a little rose from one of my clients. Now you're going to absolutely love this. On the inside, it's Archangel Michael.
Oh.
When she gave it to me, I cried. So the shamanic path I'm on is the rose priestess lineage. So there's the rose.
And she gave you the rose and
it's Michael. Part. Yes, I literally was crying when she's like, I saw this and I thought of you. And it's amazing, you know, just sharing when they share, they continue to share the opening to spirit even after the sessions. And it's like, you just form these like beautiful bonds with them. It's just it's like, that's why I do what I do.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that the work continuing, because the work that I do, sometimes I'll have people say, my shoulder was really hurting me, and you worked on my shoulder, and like the next day my shoulder didn't feel any better. But like the day after that night, I was like completely pain-free. And it's really hard to explain to somebody that this work keeps going. It doesn't just end. It doesn't just end or stop. It keeps moving and shifting.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and
I think it's also interesting that it's one of those, the work that I do is one of those, like, I want to get to the point where I don't have to see you again, you know. I mean, not literally, like, I love being with the people, but I'm just like, oh, wait a minute, that's kind of,
well, they have to choose to do the work,
right? So
too, like we can shine a light and be guides, but they have to choose.
Right.
But I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
it's just such a funny journey, it's very interesting. And I feel like you and I have some of the same guides.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of the same energies, certainly some of the same experiences,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
When Michael shows up and it's otherworldly is not, doesn't even begin to capture what that experience is like. So
I'm never going to forget one time you said to me, like, I forget how old I was then, maybe 27, 26. I don't know. But you were like, for a young woman, you've certainly been through a lot. Like, and there's a lot of there's just a lot of energy,
yeah.
So it's definitely been, a fun path. Now I'm 34.
Well, it's interesting to, I see people's transitions in this world of knowing people personally and working with them personally and see their journey that they're taking and
Yeah.
being like behind the scenes, like rooter of like, yes, go,
Yeah.
keep it going, keep doing, keep moving through it.
Mm-hmm.
And just, it's beautiful.
I've always referred to you as my shaman up there in the Northeast. I know that you won't ever accept that title,
No,
but
I just really don't like that whole shaman concept because it's just not been my training, but I understand how people come to see me as somebody that experiences that in that way.
I mean, I've seen a lot of things. So, and I feel like I see you, but yeah, again, I have just a lot of reverence and respect for you. And
Well, thank you.
yeah, thank you for being on the podcast. I mean, we have like 3 minutes. So if there's anything, a burning desire to share to the community or
No, I'm just
anything.
grateful. I'm just grateful that you're doing this. And if people want to find me, they can find me on the website at scottaevans.com, which I think you'll probably put in the description or whatever.
I will.
It's fascinating. Like, I feel like I had this I'll end with this experience. I had this experience of being in prayer with other people and being gifted with seeing the person's soul of not what I thought they were, not who they thought they were, but the beauty that was within them.
Oh my God, I'm gonna cry.
And it's all inspiring. It's all inspiring. So that's the light that's in each and every one of us. It's covered up by all kinds of garbage and crap most of the time, and things we need and think we need to do or don't do, programs, beliefs,
trauma,
concepts. Yeah. But that light is there. And I think that's important that we touch into that. And if you're not feeling that or not seeing that, then maybe, there is light. It's there. Just sometimes we don't see it that way.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's this journey, we could talk endlessly about.
We literally could. And that's what I find that happens with all the guests, no matter what walk of life, however they've found God, goddess, whatever. It's like I could talk for hours about this stuff. It's such a beautiful way to connect and share and learn and grow. And I'm just super grateful to have you in my life as a mentor, a friend. And I'm just glad that you were, on the podcast today. So
thank you so much.
Thank you. I said aura quartz, but it's actually Lumerian quartz. So I've been holding this the whole time. I love it so much, but thank you. And
thank you.
To the listeners or viewers, however you're consuming the information, if you feel the call, then reach out to Scott. He's an amazing being. And thank you so much for tuning in. We will catch you next week. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.